stuff that you wouldn't want done to an animal, never mind another human being. It was worse than a mental ward. It was like hell. Hell on earth.
Visitors often claim they hear the sound of children's laughter. Slamming doors are said to be a common occurrence. Some insist faces have appeared in windows to rooms that are unoccupied and in photos where nobody was standing.
Insane asylums terrify us because we don't really understand what is going on behind those closed doors. We often hear about so many dark stories about abuse and torture, or we even hear insane stories about these patients doing unimaginable things. Well, how's it going, you guys? I'm your host for this one, Landon Do Not Sing, and welcome back to another Most Amazing Top 10 video. Before we get started, I want to know, what is something that absolutely terrifies you? Let me know in the comment section below. Alright, so let's get right into this video. Let's get right into what you guys clicked for. This is the top 10 scary insane asylum stories. Possessed Jane starts us off in at number 10. Jane was a new patient admitted to a psychiatric wing of a hospital. During the night, a staff member performed her usual nightly routines and checks, but when she went to Jane's room, she saw her sitting in a puddle of blood. As it turns out, Jane had been slicing off her skin on her shin with her dirty fingernails. As she was slicing her skin, she would pull the skin up her leg, which would expose her muscle and bones. I mean, what the heck is going on? Jane also had a nightly routine where she would need to touch every wall in her room in a crucifix pattern. But one night, a staff member went to check up on her and she saw her standing in the doorway smiling. The staff asked her what was wrong, and Jane said, "What makes you think you're speaking to Jane?" I mean, oh god, I don't know how people can work the graveyard shift in an insane asylum. Anything can happen. Everyone is a little bit cuckoo. But you know what? I hope that they're getting extra pay. The lost souls of a Rancho Los Amigos brings us to number 9. This hospital is located in Downey, California, and although it looks inviting, it has a very dark and sinister history. Rancho Los Amigos was actually ranked as one of the country's best hospital in 2011, but it is also plagued with scary hauntings and paranormal activity. Back in the late 1800s, the building was converted into an insane asylum. It was built to house the mentally insane, homeless, and handicapped. The residents would work for physical labor in exchange for board and medical care. However, in the 1950s, it began to shut down its wards, including the mental hospital. People began to uncover some pretty disturbing things. In 2006, people found a freezer in the morgue that had mummified amputated limbs and brain tissue samples that were left behind from when the hospital was abandoned. So it makes you wonder what kind of treatments that they were doing here and what happened to these poor people. It is now rumored that this hospital is extremely haunted, and if you care about your mental and physical well-being, you won't step foot inside of the Rancho Los Amigos hospital. The Athens Lunatic Asylum haunts us in at number 8. This insane asylum was built in 1874, and it was originally intended to treat people with tuberculosis. The hospital staff began abusing their patients due to overcrowding, and they would constantly hurt them both physically and mentally. There was even one doctor by the name of Walter Jackson who was a big fan of this transorbital lumbotomy. Okay, I'm not really sure what it is, but from what I'm seeing, it's pretty damn gross. Like, the doctors were taking this tool and going in between your eyes so that they can work their way into the frontal lobe. It's pretty disturbing and disgusting. So once they were able to get into the frontal lobe, from there, he would sever connections in order to correct their behavior. He performed over 200 lobotomies during his time. So as a result, there were hundreds of deaths that happened here. This hospital was so bad, it even has a permanent corpse stain on the floor because a body had been left there for way too long. Yeah, I don't think Mr. Cleaner or Bleach will help out with this situation. Up next, in at number 7, we have the tongue biter. A patient who tested positive for HIV and paranoid schizophrenia thought that the nurses at the psych ward were all trying to kill him. So as a way to protect himself, he would bite his tongue and spit HIV positive blood into their faces and try to get it into their mouth. Well, this actually sounds so damn terrifying. Whenever the nurses had to interact with him, they had to wear full masks, gowns, gloves in order to protect themselves. Yeah, this is absolutely insane. I bet his tongue is so damaged from him constantly biting himself. This sounds like the worst patient ever. We have another horror story coming onto this list in at number 6. 6. PENNHURST Asylum is located in Pennsylvania, and it was opened in 1908. This was a hospital for children, but it was barely staffed and it was poorly funded. So this led to a lot of overworked, desperate staff members who used a lot of cruel and unusual punishments. A lot of children were drugged, they were chained to their beds, isolated for days, and they had their teeth ripped out of their gums to prevent biting. A reporter went into the insane asylum to investigate how the workers were treating the patients, and in 1968 it was finally shut down. But the fun doesn't stop there. It is believed that this place is still haunted by upset children who were abused there. If you enter the doors, you can actually hear some screaming, you can hear doors being slammed, and uncontrollable crying. Number 5 takes us to the Waverly Hills Sanitarium. The insane asylum was built in 1910, and this was the place where patients with tuberculosis would go to get some treatment. But they had no idea what was in store for them. Doctors at the hospital carried out painful experimental surgeries as a way to treat the disease. They would insert balloons into their lungs, and they also tried removing ribs in order to allow the lungs to expand. Yeah, I can safely say that none of these surgery techniques are being used today because they're absolutely insane. It's crazy, it's ludicrous. Maybe the doctor should have been admitted to the hospital because they were absolutely crazy. As a result of these surgeries, 64,000 patients died, and one of the employees hanged herself in the laundry room because she couldn't tolerate how the patients were being treated. The corpses would then be transported out of the morgue through a body chute, and a lot of the original building is actually still intact today. Slicing into number 4, we have the Metropolitan State Hospital. They opened their doors in 1930, and even though it was supposed to be a safe haven for children with mental health issues, it was more like a prison. Children would be heavily sedated on a constant basis, and they would be severely disciplined. In 1978, there was a patient named Anna Marie Davey, and one day she went out for a walk, but she never returned. 2 years later, another patient confessed to the brutal murder, and he brought the police to 3 separate graves where he had buried parts of her mutilated body. And if that wasn't gruesome enough, he even kept 7 of her teeth tucked away in his room just as a souvenir. I mean, how the hell does a murder in a hospital even happen? He got away with murdering her, cutting up her body, and digging 3 separate graves. Someone definitely wasn't very good at their jobs, otherwise he would have been caught a lot sooner, or that girl wouldn't have been murdered. Things get pretty gruesome in at number 3 with TOPEKA State Hospital. The hospital opened its doors back in 1872 for the medically and criminally insane. For nearly 100 years, they closed their doors because there were so many reports of abuse and murder. During its operational days, TOPEKA State Hospital was infamous for their elaborate and brutal treatments. They used to force their patients to become sterile. They used hydrotherapy and castration. A lot of the patients were starved to death, or they would be left in a tub of ice cold water for days. Some of them would be tied to trees, and they would be left for hours and hours. It's no wonder why the patients who were admitted here just keep getting more and more insane. Next up, number 2, we have the arm eater. A woman with a personality disorder was moved into a new room for closer monitoring, and that's because she was at a high risk of harming herself. This 30-year-old woman was struggling with mental issues ever since she was 8 years old. During Christmas time, she started to really struggle with her health because it was a really tough time for her. So she began to bite herself. And I'm not talking about just digging her teeth into, a little bit of skin. She would actually grab her arm with her teeth and tear flesh away. And we're talking like huge pieces. I don't want to get too graphic on you guys. It's pretty crazy. She would then chew it and then yeah. And she said that a voice in her head told her to do it. Patient gouges out their own eyes brings us to number 1, because why not? I came across this story on Reddit, and it was written by Never Got Challenger. This story is about their mother who used to work at a neuropsychiatric ward while she was in grad school. One night while she was performing her routine checks, she stumbled upon the most gruesome and horrific scene of her life. During the night shift, all the patients' bedroom doors are normally closed, but one room was different. As she turned the corner, she noticed that one of the rooms were open, and she saw someone's leg on the floor. When she looked inside of the room, she saw a patient who had just gouged both of her own eyes out with her bare hands. She was just on the floor holding her bloody eyes. I mean, is this real life right now? And that's pretty much where we are going to end today's video, because I just don't want to go any further. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next most amazing top 10 video.
Bye.